Game begin.
Hello and welcome back to the Spy Colony Podcasts, your number one podcast for all of the Stasis information that you require. I am here with Michael J. Flores.
Reformed Stasis player.
Reformed Stasis player. Reformed in what way? You're just off it?
I was off. I should have played Stasis this week, actually. But I didn't. I played Red Deck, which was the deck that I won League with a few weeks ago, and I did not win. I did not, in fact, win any matches against human opponents. I got the bye, and then that was it.
So after the end of last week's podcast, basically the final note was, I think Stasis is the best. And then we listed all of the matchups that exist, and then we're like, hung up.
like the 51st percentile.
hung up. And then we're like, actually, after you list all the decks, it doesn't actually sound like Stasis is that good.
Yeah, Lan claims Stasis is a meme deck.
He might be right. I think there's some things, so we recorded Stasis episode 1. I think I had played
which according to R&D member Max McCall is just Tempting Worm episode 2.
Which I'll get into in a second. Stasis episode 1, I had played 4 matches on the side of Stasis for pre-modern Stasis at the recording of that episode. How many matches had you played of pre-modern Stasis? 0 on the side
Total?
of Stasis? Yeah.
At the point that we recorded it?
Yeah.
Straight up 0.
Yeah, 0. So we had 4 between us. And then the following week, you had played 3 more matches. Yeah. And I had managed to play 1 more match because the matches obviously last a long time. So we had doubled from 4 total matches between us.
When you say 3 matches, I played 6 games, and 2 of those games were against elves. So just to be clear, 6 games, 2 of which were against elves.
So then we had 8 matches, and what I had realized over the course of my 1 match was just Stasis is kind of a weird deck. I was like, you would have to really play a lot of Stasis to be a Stasis guy, because a lot of it is kind of straightforward, but then all of a sudden, the decision trees are just wonky, right?
It's weird. You know how you once, I think you were joking, I don't know if joking makes it not true, but you're like, Michael J plays Burn like the Rock. You said something like that, right? Like, I play Burn like it's...
Yeah, that is written into the text of Iron Man versus the Hulk.
So I think there's 2 kinds of Stasis guys. I think there's Stasis guys like me, and I think you, where we're just kind of ashamed to have Stasis in our deck, where we're just like...
we would just rather be casting counter spells and
I can't wait to sideboard this down to 1. Paying for... I guess this will just keep a black place off the tip. Oh, this is just... and then there's Stasis guys like Rich Busey, who had won League that week, who's portenting on the first turn against Stasis. He will slam Stasis down as soon as he can.
Yeah, Stasis on turn 2.
And he will just start paying for it with a Forsaken City. And he just never looks back. And he's just like, the only way you ever lose is not getting an early Stasis. And I'm watching him play, and I'm like, I wouldn't play Stasis in this spot.
Yeah.
And he's just paying for Stasis. There was a game against Chris C where Chris C is just down to 1 or 2 lands, and he's just only alive because he's sacrificing his lands to Zuran Orb. That's why he's down to 1 or 2 lands. And he just desperation Pyroblasts to Stasis. And Rich, I don't know, expends 5 resources to counterspell the Pyroblast, and I'm like, why would you use your valuable counterspell, whatever? Do you think you could lose to his 2 lands? He's literally sacrificing lands to not die to Black Vice right now. Let him kill the Stasis. Who cares, right?
Yeah.
It's got 15 lands to 2. How could you lose? He's not any more or less out from under the Black Vice, right? Destroying the Stasis does get a card out of his hand, but not destroying the Stasis also gets a card out of his hand. But he can't cast anything. He's got a Rishodon Port and a Mountain, right? It is mono green deck, right? So, and I was just like, why? So I was just like, this is weird because I think it was definitely right for Chris to pyroblast the Stasis.
Well, he had no choice.
Yes, it's the right play, right? Look, but I think like your mileage may vary whether or not you care that the Stasis gets pyroblasted, and I would not have defended the Stasis in that spot. But Rich Busey, he loves a freaking Stasis in play.
Yeah,
and he will like.
That's where he wants to live.
As soon as he can, and he will pay for it. And God bless him.
Yeah, I like to definitely deploy it when the most lands of my opponent are tapped underneath it.
Yeah.
It made me think that I would entertain greater than one copy of Power Sync. Because the way that I see it is like you just play a game where your opponent has like, you know, whatever, they have like 10 or 12 or, you know, well, I guess they would have like 14, like, you know, they have like, let's say they have 5 lands in play and they tap out for any. Okay, so it's complicated because they should never tap out. Like you should, if you're playing against Stasis, you just shouldn't cast anything because you're gonna get basically the equivalent of Tide comboed if you tap 5 lands, right? But that's where the Power Sync would come in. But yeah, so you tap as many lands down, and then their deck, the remainder of their deck is just a mix of however many naturalize effects they have and however many lands they have to cast it versus your however many thwart, foil, counterspells you have and the lands that you have to cast it, and then you just checkmate them. So at that point, like whether or not you have Vice, like Vice,
you don't checkmate them unless there's Vice. Like otherwise, like you're just
Vice
paying mana.
Vice just tells you what the runway is, and then also if you have Stroke of Genius, like you're playing towards the Stroke of Genius. So the Stroke of Genius is like the very end all be all, but Vice just shortens their runway, right? So they have a like, I'm going to draw 5 more lands, and then after I have 5 lands, I can go Ray of Revelation, Flashback Ray of Revelation, Naturalize, and so they're trying to put together, you know, that many
115 resistance defense days. But actually, if you fail, like you're like tapping a lot.
Yeah, you just lose on the you lose on the spot. Yeah.
So here's the thing two things that I wanted to point out because I wasn't feeling well yesterday, so I didn't go running and I didn't work in the afternoon. But instead, I just watched the Wisconsin guys stream for like 5 hours. I just like lied on my couch and watched them stream, and they were playing some Stasis. And you know what's really good against Stasis that anybody can play? Carpet of Flowers.
Yeah, of course.
Like Carpet of Flowers is already a card that just gained so much popularity after LobsterCon. And the thing that was funny to me is the post LobsterCon chatter is that Carpet of Flowers is too narrow. People are like, oh, you know, like I guess in the top 8 they just like kind of zeroed in on this, and it was like a good 1 week thing, but like, you know, it's too narrow. But is it too narrow? It seems great. It's like fine against Dreadnought, incredible against Side Control, incredible against Stasis. Like Tide Control and Stasis are the 2 decks that have a ton of islands, but those are also trying to restrict your mana.
Those are all the same deck though. Like, well, the like given number, like in order for it to be good, in order for it to be superb, right? Like something like maybe 20% of the room would need to be on that spread of decks. And granted, a lot of rooms have
like 15% of the format is just 12-12.
Right, exactly. So
I mean, like if you could get another 5% between other decks with Island, I mean, like which includes decks other than Stasis,
right,
but Control, like the Blue Storm. You know, some idiots play Blue Storm.
I'm
looking at one of them.
I haven't played Blue Storm in a while. I have seen people play Blue Storm. I don't know if I would play Blue Storm in this metagame where there are no mid-range decks, but I guess it's pretty good against Enchantress, all things considered, and it is plausibly good against Dreadnought, except for the fact that it's very bad against Tide combo specifically.
So here's my other note. I don't want to say this deck is coming back. For me to say this deck is coming back is similar to me saying that Red is dead, although Red is dead again.
Because you lost 2 matches, yeah.
I did. I did lose 2 matches, which is like more matches than...
I will point out that Burn has won the last 2 Magic Online leagues. So that's a...
Yeah, I mean, I used to be aces with Burn, man. I can't win anymore. I mean, I guess I won 2 weeks. I literally won the league 2 weeks ago.
Also, Burn's win rate on the data matrix is at 52.2, and Goblins is down below 50 at 49.8.
All right, so I don't want to say the sec is back. For us to say the sec is back is just one of those, like, don't call it a comeback. Because my beta never was. But man, Pernicious Deed.
No.
Pernicious Deed in this metagame?
Okay, I just no.
I mean, it good against Manlands.
No, it's so bad.
It good against Black Vice.
It's not really good against Manlands. It is a Vindicate against Manlands. The card Powder Keg is colorless, and every deck has access to for Manlands. It's good
against Enchantresses.
I mean,
what if they have a Karmic Guide? Your permanents all suck anyway.
Karmic Justice, yeah.
Karmic Justice, sorry.
But you'll have none of them. Like, the problem is you'll have 0 of them.
Yeah, what if you just sandbag and then only have like 3 permanents and blow up all their stuff? They overload you and then you just play a land. I mean, like, I already solved the problem for you right there. Pernicious Deed Magician. It's not like you had an available route to card advantage.
All right, so Mike is calling his shot that he's going to play the Rock this week, and the best part is all of the Crushers in New York don't have to change their deck to fix the matchup because they'll already have 56%. Like, what do they need to do?
When you say that, you're talking like I don't know that already. Like, I mean, it is true. You're just making a true statement.
All right.
So, like, the last time I played the Rock, I won a meetup with it last year, but really the last time I played the Rock was like at LobsterCon side event where I came in second. Notably, I lost in the first round and then lost in the finals, both to David Tao. If that happened at League, I would win one match. So I would lose in the first round, lose the last round.
Yeah, exactly.
Win in the middle, which is about the expectation. If you in a 3-round match that's about the expectation of the Rock.
I mean, it's on the border. It's the
0.5.
It's 1.5. Yeah.
I mean, it's one or the other, and it's not a 2-1. My 2-1 decks are like 12-12, like all the respectable decks.
Yeah. The respectable.
My 1-2 decks are like Burn, Goblins. I guess only 1-2 twice. You get 2-1 most of the time. I mean, Stasis didn't get a 3-0. I mean, it did for Rich, not for me.
Right. Stasis was meaningfully fine in that room, and I am currently 4-1 in online league with Stasis, so I have a win. Are you
playing the Bant version or like some mono?
I just play a mono blue version. I'm playing mono blue. I'm just playing Chris Roy with no propaganda. Like, I'm trying.
I like propaganda. It's been good for me.
Yeah, you said that after I registered my deck. I was the most skeptical of it specifically just because it can get red blasted, and then if it does, you just lose.
They're red blasting it, I mean, first of all, there's no shortage of things for them to red blast, and a lot of them could be worse leverage than a propaganda. Like when you thwart and they red blast you, like it's kind of like pretty lopsided.
I mean, the thing about it is that you might be like sitting behind your propaganda, and then they can just amass a battlefield of creatures.
My God, no. I mean, like, I can just imagine you're sitting behind your propaganda, you're discarding every turn.
Yeah,
to your Forsaken City just to keep the stasis going, and they're just sitting there, compounding their cards in hand, and they're just like, the tax man cometh. Here comes the the interest rate.
Yeah.
You're like, thwart. You're like, oh, buddy, you're not gonna want to see what happens next.
Yeah, absolutely. So so that's kind of where I'm at, where I was at on propaganda. The thing is, so a few observations. Powder Keg is not that much better, and also Powder Keg triggers on your upkeep, which online demands that you click one more time, and you're going to be doing that click like 30 more times, and each time it's going to cost you like a third of a second of game clock, and then by the end of it, you're just going to be completely buried under your clock. So propaganda is better insofar as it does not create a trigger on your upkeep. That's another argument against Forsaken City. I was just like not putting my Forsaken City on the battlefield because I just didn't want another thing to click for as long as possible.
Do you know what I love about pre-modern, though? Like, we're talking about Stasis, we're talking about Tide Control. You could play decks that are like reminiscent of the decks that I actually wanted to play back in the day. Like Draw Go is kind of the same as Tide Control. Like, Tide Control is just Draw Go, but it has a combo in it. And then, like, Stasis, the Chris Roy version of Stasis with Morphling is also just Draw Go.
Yeah, it's just Draw Go.
But, like, it just also has...
Morphling's no longer in the deck, but yeah, it's still Draw Go.
Oh, so you're just winning with a stroke?
I have a stroke and a vice.
Oh, you have a vice.
Yeah, okay. I have one stroke, one vice, and one brain freeze in the sideboard. So I have
more vices in the side. Vice is the best card, dude.
I'm okay with having more vices now that I realized I need to win the game instead of like clocking out every match.
Can we talk about anything but Stasis? We already had like 2 weeks of
No,
Stasis.
yeah, I wanted to get into like thing number one, which was basically a like framework for understanding that Mike and I don't hate each other, because I think people are always like, our two dads are fighting whenever we record a Stasis and Tempting Worm episode, and there is like probably plentiful like frustration on both sides for us, and you can hear it in the discussions and in the super secret Discord, which you can get access to.
I was frustrated in the Tempting Worm episode. I actually had no frustration in this.
I had substantially less frustration in the Stasis. I was frustrated because one of the things about like our process isn't very efficient, but the thing that gets me the most is when you cite anecdotal evidence. Like, I was more annoyed at talking about something that happened in one game versus like how long it took for me to get you to just say, you know, a thing that I could at least agree with, which is just that like, if you keep Stasis in against the Dreadnought Mirror, they can't cast cantrips, and then that would have, you know, unlocked a further part of the discussion. But that doesn't matter. That stuff changes over time, and is part of the second topic I wanted to talk about today. But at first I wanted to talk about this kind of rules of engagement sort of thing, which was that and everything goes into this because we do a lot of talking online, and I think it is just like, we
never fight in the super secret Discord, do we? Like, I mean,
no, we fought like, about the super secret Discord fights were about boarding out Stasis and about Tempting Worm. Like, the recipe for a heated episode is if you drop in and you say something along the lines of, "There's nothing I could have done," and then I start listing things that you could have done, and then you say that they're different or whatever.
So I mean, like, I'm gonna say something that agrees with you, right? So like, I posted Lan's 3-0 deck this week, and I said something like, I can't see any changes to this other than this one change. And one of the things in Lan's deck is 3 Impulse and 1 Factor Fiction, and Sam Black said you can't see 4 Impulse or a 2-2 split, and I'm just like, of course I could see it. Maybe I should have just said I wouldn't make any changes other than this other change. Like, but I just used a different shorthand. Well, like, obviously, well, I can see is like, yes, I can imagine a universe where I'd rather have.
But this is not fair, because Sam is well actuallying you, which, like, you know, he's getting you on a technicality, right? Like, basically, the thing that got me with Tempting Worm was like, and it was fair. You had the episode didn't need to be 3 hours. You could have just been like, me and Andy tested it, and I should have just accepted that you and Andy tested it, and you arrived at your conclusion with testing. My thing was just like, you know, you tested it. If you were to assign the amount of confidence you had in your like post-board matchup black-green survival against mono-blue, it seemed very high. And then it sounded like after the match, you're just like, well, I just got unlucky. And
that's what happened.
Right, but that's
like we tested to the point where Andy was like, it's pointless to test anymore. You have an overwhelming advantage. But like, I happened to lose the game, right? Like, if that just happens.
Well, I think the reality is actually that the black-green deck either doesn't have an overwhelming advantage, given
I think it does.
Well,
especially Kaplan didn't have tide control after sideboard.
I mean, Survival Rock has dropped down to 48.4% against mono blue.
First of all, I'm not going to start like advocating for things that I don't know what people's operations are.
No.
But if you just look at the recommendations that Phil Bunch of Numbers is making, he's just wrong about all this stuff. So he's just straight up wrong. So like
okay.
So that's
I don't need to go too far into it. All I'm saying is that, like, you know, your confidence in him being wrong is like, there's nothing to say that you're like, he's wrong and you're right, or you're right and he's wrong, right? There's like literally nothing. So if somebody was like listening to us and they're like, okay, well, what should I do? You know, should I do Michael J, or should I do Phil Bunch Numbers, or should I do a third thing, which is like taking lessons from both? Or should I do a fourth thing, which is like learning to play the matchup differently? One of the simplest things that Hoyp, you know, was talking about at the LobsterCon house was, he was just like, people just cast their Duresses and Cabal Therapies at the wrong time, and that's like why they're losing.
Yeah, that's common.
But you know, I assume that BK knows what time to cast his Duress Cabal Therapy, and he just like lost back to Mono Blue Dreadnought.
Yeah, so like first of all, I think that like even if you're talking about BK, right? Like there's the version of BK that like was a Pro Tour regular, right? And then there's a version of BK who's just like deep into middle age, like playing pre-modern for fun and stuff. Like it's the same with me. Like I just don't you just don't care at every single game.
You don't
Right?
think
Like,
he's bringing the heart of the champion to LobsterCon 2025?
I think that he might, and I think that it's hard to sustain that all the time when you're playing Survival Rock. Like Survival Rock isn't a deck
It was the first 2 rounds.
yeah, it's like it's not a deck that's like an inspire. Like you know that speech that Kenneth Branagh makes at the end of Henry. Is it Henry V?
No.
I mean,
I
I
don't
wish
know.
I were a freaking British aristocrat during this like Shakespearean speech. I'm so inspired. That's not the kind of feeling that you get playing Survival Rock. Like you're playing Survival Rock, you're like, ugh. Like I mean, there's just matchups where you're just like, I'm never gonna win game one. My deck is one Bone Shredder.
So he
Right,
lost.
like-
He lost. He didn't even bring the heart of the champion to the hall that day because of his deck choice. Is what you're saying?
I think like imagine he had played his green white survival deck with Opal Wave in it, which I feel like that's an inspired deck.
Yeah, he's very excited. Yeah, he
It's
would bring.
so
yeah.
cool, right? Like, and I don't know if it's the best deck, but it seems like a
It would
deck that
It'd
would
give him
make me
more.
want
Yeah.
to feel life.
Yeah,
you
it would
know?
give him more fire. Okay,
Right? So like that's very different from like also like anyway. I don't want to like dwell too much on this, but I mean if you just want to talk about like process and procedure, I think it's just you could just be like, look, maybe I don't trust Mike. He doesn't play as much as so and so, like whoever the other person is. But you just like listen to what he says, and you're just like, oh, this actually makes a lot of sense to me. This is how cards line up, right? And the thing is that most people don't have infinite time. So when you say like, oh, I could try it myself, I could learn to do this myself, or whatever, like the reason that people listen to influencers or watch YouTube videos or listen to podcasts and stuff, in part is because it's a shortcut against their own time. Not everybody has time to learn how to do all of these things perfectly, and so they borrow the technology from somebody else. And if you have two competing philosophies on this, just ask yourself, like,
which
I
one
don't
makes
know,
more sense to you?
which one
Yeah.
makes more sense to me?
So I wanted to extrapolate that, which is this, that like I think a lot of people take dramatic offense to whenever a host of Spy Colony disagrees with something they believe in,
Yeah.
and it is the like creed of Spy Colony that we like are arguing in good faith, and we don't really like. It's not so like. We joke that it's propaganda or that it's like whatever, but people will just be like, oh, guess red isn't dead after all. It's like when we said that red was dead, that's what we thought. And like if you wanted to go and like play red, like we weren't saying that you can't.
At the same time, if I had gone to LobsterCon this year, I'm like 50% likely to play red.
Right. So there's
Right?
that
Like,
element
even
too.
if I think that, right? So,
But
the thing is like, I'm agreeing with you, right? I'm not disagreeing with you.
Well, we have no contempt for each other. We don't have contempt for our audience. That would be the stupidest thing ever. And we don't even.
We did make a pre-modern for idiots page.
Yeah, but
So-
that's because everyone has an idiotic side to them. And we don't
That's
have.
why I could put all my hammerhead shark decks.
And I don't have, dramatic contempt for our haters insofar as like them like saying something that is opposite to. I mean, I guess I have contempt for our haters because they don't seem to understand that like you can like disagree with what we have to say. You can call me out on stuff. You can call Mike out on stuff, and we can like respond, or we can just like a lot of times it's just a misunderstanding. People will just be like, "Oh, you said this," and I'm like, "Okay, well, I guess it makes sense that like." That's what it sounded like, but now that you pointed it out, I suppose that I should add more nuance to the statement or whatever.
I don't think you have to. It's like I think this is an area where you and I just fundamentally disagree. I don't think we even talk about this.
Well,
Right?
I wanted to
Like
get
the content they'll keep listening.
no,
to.
no, but it's not about that. It's actually also about like the there was like one thing was like when we created the void in our Discord, right? Like
People love it. It's their
the
favorite
reason
channel.
we created it was because a specific person was like, I would like to be able to say things without judgment. And I'm just like, I already don't judge you for saying things, like even if I disagree with them, and even if I think that they're misguided or like whatever.
I think
Like
the super secret. Which one is the super secret Discord versus the Spike colonies? I think you were, in my opinion, It's sorry, not in my opinion. In my understanding, I thought you were referencing the Spike Colony Discord.
I am
now
referencing.
I realized it was a different Discord.
No, I am referencing.
We were fighting the super secret Discord. I'm like, oh, that's a different Discord. But like, anyway, what I'm
no, we were fighting in the Spike Colony Discord. We had the tempting worm discussion in the Spike Colony Discord. I'm pretty sure because Andy was a part of it, and Andy's not in the secret or Discord that you can't just pay to access.
You can't pay to access.
Okay, so.
And yet Pog is in that Discord.
Yeah, that's. I mean, he's on thin ice. So,
Itai only posts non-pre-modern.
Yeah, he only posts to talk about standard or modern with Tom Michalski.
Like, hey, and then Tom Michalski's like, okay, let's talk about modern.
Yeah. I'm
disgusted at Itai. I'm like, how can you be my grandson? Why are you talking about these horrible formats?
Right. So. And then the other thing that I wanted to get into was like
Rebel, but I'm gonna buy 3 Corey Steel Cutters because of Rebel this week.
Yeah, why not?
All these decks.
Yeah, she doesn't listen to the podcast, so it's fine. So, and I got like, I think that some people, will be like, specifically, 10 Arms was like, oh, I hope you didn't feel like, you were getting called out when I was saying, 10 Arms said his thing, which was like, oh, I think that like specific people have outsized influence and people just kind of follow their thing. I was like, no, I don't take offense to that at all. Like that's a criticism. It's not a directed criticism, but it's also easy enough for me to identify. It's like, oh, I know when I do this, I know the reason I do this.
It's and so like, funny. I just don't care. I just don't care ever.
No, I know that's your thing. But I want people to feel free to like directly criticize us if they think that we're doing something. Because like I hate it when people like, because the thing is that's what I want them to do too, right? So some people will say something and there'll be 2 sorts of reactions. So they'll have like a hot take and you'll be like, okay, well that's like that doesn't make sense. Like why do you think that? Like what are the reasons? And then you just like unpack the reasoning and you're like, okay, well that like a lot of the discussions, the most popular discussion in pre-modern right now is just like, oh, we should ban Parallax Tide. And like anybody who like, there's basically a bucket of arguments that are like, you could do this, this, and this, but there's also a bucket of arguments of just like, I just don't like it, or they're like, oh,
I have to tell you this. It's occasionally you say stuff that is so smart, right? So like, and like one of the things that you said, I don't remember where I read it, but it was so smart, and you were just like, no deck has a right to exist.
Yeah.
Right? And you're just like, almost all the arguments that people make come down to the pet deck that I like can't survive if Parallax Tide is gone.
Yeah. And that's my criticism of 10 Arms himself.
It is because it's so smart. And it's just it's not like if you just want to play kitchen table Magic with no stakes and no glory and no anything else, do whatever you want. But we live in an ecosystem where people fly across the country, or in like Jens Jaeger's case, fly across the ocean, or Aaron Dix or whatever. Like people care. They care about the bragging rights. They care about drawing a line in the sand, etc., etc. And like people, and I honestly think that it's like paraphrasing like, I want to perform at the same level of somebody who has way more dedication than I do. And because I'm not willing to put in the work, I need Martin Berlin to ban Parallax Tide. Like, that's literally how it sounds to me. Like, I missed when I did the power rankings. I just didn't put Enchantress in. And I'm sure, like, 10 Arms was, like, rolling his eyes when I put my list in. There's no Enchantress in the top 10. And do you know what the best deck was? Enchantress. Like,
no, it's still Dreadnought. It's still Dreadnought. It just so happened that your Enchantress deck with Omega Carpet of Flowers and Xanted Swarm was the second best deck happened to win the tournament.
2 copies in the top.
No, you're right.
Super high win rate, winner in the hands of one of the best players in the format. I mean,
we should get that in for topic 2. I'm excited for topic 2. When I said no deck has a right, that was in response to 10 Arms because he actually asked me. And he asked me, and I'm paraphrasing, and this was in the Band Talk channel of the main pre-modern Discord. He was just like, "Oh, like, do you think that like Enchantress shouldn't exist or anything, or something along those lines?" And I was just like, "No, I don't think that any deck should exist. I think that the decks that do exist and succeed exist because of the parameters of the format. Like, it's just literally Darwin." Right.
It is
absolutely survival of the fittest, right?
Pure Darwin.
Like that is the purpose of the metagame and the game. And this was at a time where 10 Arms, and I give him credit that for, like, I'm sure he has plenty of reasons that he would dislike. I mean, he plays other decks, right? So he's like, oh, thing number one was that Enchantress is struggling versus Parallax Tide, and then also I can't play anything else that I like to play because Parallax Tide, and so that's frustrating. So I give him credit for saying that, and for having empathy for other players in the format that might want to play mid-rangey decks that have access to their lands but don't have access to ways to interact with Tide. Those are all understandable.
I would actually just dial the clock back a little bit. I remember listening to Flint and Hoyp doing PSS coverage, and there was a time that the red deck was considered. This was like when I joined the format, right? 2023, is that right?
22.
22.
You played in LobsterCon 22. That was your first LobsterCon, yeah.
Like, and then Flint was just like, I think people should just be banning the red deck every round, right? Like, because everybody had a red deck that year that I was in PSS, and I was just like, it was weird to me that people thought that. And I mean, I didn't win a freaking match that year, but but if you look at the decks people wanted to play, right? Like, I was playing Replenish. I got beat by Metelsky playing the red deck. The red deck literally forced Rich Shea to innovate Parfait, because he used to be a blue-white Tide control player, and he couldn't beat the red deck, right? Like, think about that for a second. It took Rich Shea off of his pet deck. The red deck was so over. And, like, compare that to Elves. Compare that to, we all know, like, the Rock versus red deck. Look at all the decks that were played, like, in, the kindler, simpler version of pre-modern from 3-4 years ago. The red deck was the Parallax Tide of the era, right?
Yeah. I mean,
people card format.
People have called for the Fire Blast ban. People have called for Wirewood Symbiote, Gaia's Cradle, Survival of the Fittest ban. People obviously, got Lantax banned. Gush is a candidate. Dreadnought's a candidate. Tide's a candidate. Parallax Wave is the most unbelievably strange one that I've started to hear, and I'm just like, that would just...
Parallax Wave is so good for the format. Like,
it's also just an interesting... Okay, so, I mean, Berlin has made it explicit that, like, one, a lot of the, like, these cards didn't work this way in the pre-modern era, and as a result, they are, like, breaking the, like, suspension of disbelief that this is, like, a nostalgic whatever experience. I'm going to set that all aside.
Beyond that now, right?
Berlin,
we play our own format.
Yeah, it's just its own format.
I mean, if he decided to make radical changes, there would just be a revolt. We would just be old school. We would all play the way that we want. And
yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible that
I'm sure that's
the format could splinter in that way. But regardless, he's kind of just stated that. I mean, I think Berlin is probably closer to Spike Colony than not. Obviously, half of Spike Colony maybe thinks the Lantax ban was still debatable on some percentage of grounds.
Not this half.
But Berlin's thinking is just that, like, pre-modern is, like, interesting, and it's, like, fun, and it's interesting in contrast to other formats. Like, the way in which the way that pre-modern decks are is interesting, and Tide combo, like, Lantax was interesting, and I accept that it wasn't for everyone, and Tide might just be a little bit further down the line, right? Where it's like, Tax is egregious, but Tide is, like, has some of the, like, not enough to reach over the threshold that Tax reached. I mean, or it's like straddling the threshold.
If we just want to, like, lay this out for a second, this is a format that if you put together 2 cards that cost 1 mana each, you can basically combo kill your opponent with triple free spell backup on turn 2. And if you're playing certain versions, you can do it on turn 1, right? It is odd to me that people are upset about a card that costs 4 on the fundamentals and still requires another card to combo you and doesn't win the game.
Yeah, I think that
that's, like, so strange to me. Like, given the fact that Dreadnought exists and Devourer exists, land one on the second turn on the play.
Let's not get. I don't need to get too far into ban talk, because I think we can debate the merits of whatever. But I wanted to dial it all the way back to the beginning, which is just to say that, like, I think that the way that we're going to continue to carry out Spy Colony is the assumption that everybody is arguing in good faith, and we kick or don't talk to or ban the people that don't argue in good faith, and we've never had that problem. And so people should continue to argue in good faith, and that's kind of like,
if you want to say stupid stuff, you could do it in pre-modern.
Yeah, you can do it. Yeah, you can say stuff that you think is stupid, and we might just say like, hey, that doesn't make sense. And then at that point, you'll have to make it make sense, and the burden will be on you to communicate your ideas effectively. And look, we're not the most effective at communicating our ideas, but also that's not the point. Like, the point is that we have ideas that we're trying to work through and share. The second topic that I really wanted to discuss in this episode was to revisit and reframe all discussions surrounding and evaluating equity. So for a little bit of story time, the first time I understood equity as a concept in Magic the Gathering was listening to an episode of Limited Resources podcast. So I have LSV to owe two things. One, I listened to Limited Resources, and at the end of the episode, he listed his top 5 favorite liquids, and number 1 on the list, and this was like 6-7 years ago or something, number 1 on the list was Spindrift, and I had never drank a Spindrift before that episode.
Isn't it fantastic?
Spindrift is 10 times better than the next like non-alcoholic bubbly drink. Like,
it is. Yeah, but it's also like I guess it's 10 times better, but it's like 5 times as expensive.
It's not 5 times as expensive. A Spindrift is like $1 if you buy it in bulk, and
it's
like
more than 2 times as expensive.
It's 3, yeah.
Drinks.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 2 times as expensive as like a Sprite or like a LaCroix for sure.
Oh yeah, you can't compare it to a Sprite. Sprite is poison.
Right. I mean, I guess they're all poison. Given
Spindrift is not poison.
Well, Lan was saying that that's very acidic, yeah. But he's like, it's basically battery acid. But the problem is, like, you shouldn't be like
that is true.
Drinking only LaCroix or Spindrift or Waterloos.
I have a machine, and like when I first moved in by myself, like I just drank nothing but the water I was pumping out of the machine. But
plain seltzer isn't acidic.
Yeah, so. When Roman visits, all he does is just be like stand there, because I make me do it. Like, I won't make somebody else do it. He's just like, can you make me some water?
If it's plain seltzer,
bottles and bottles of.
If it's plain seltzer, you're in the clear. But I guess LaCroix and whatever, because like that's the thing is like Lan was just like, yo, we got to stop drinking seltzers. My acid doctor said it's super acidic. It's basically
that's when they thought he had GERD. He had a heart attack.
I don't want to go too, but yeah,
he didn't even have GERD.
Yeah, well, the acid doctor was still saying that basically all these people.
It's a misdiagnosis.
The acid doctor, who has his own Wikipedia page, said that basically all these like tech company offices have like unlimited seltzers, and that he's been seeing more acid related stuff with.
I need you to go back to the topic.
All right.
Less criticism of Spindrift.
Spindrift is great. So I owe that to LSV. The second thing I owe to LSV is explaining equity when I was like sort of getting back into playing competitive Magic. And he was just like, because I'd obviously watched poker on ESPN after the Moneymaker era, and
the Moneymaker era. You mean the Dave Williams era?
Sure, yeah.
For us.
And he was just like, okay, so you see a poker hand on television, and there's just percentages next to people's hands, and it just tells you how likely they are to win the hand, and they. Change based on the action on each street.
Have you never read Magic the Intangibles?
No, of course not. I haven't read any Magic like physical book.
I actually thought Magic the Intangibles was my best article ever, but then everybody thought How to Win a PTQ was the best.
Oh, it's an article.
I don't know if I've ever done this.
Everyone thinks that. I don't think you have, because if you had, I would have listened to it. All right, so
but I literally thought it was the best one I had ever written at that point.
Google that one up. So the way that LSV described it at the time was just like, you could play each poker pot, and instead of just doing all streets of betting, you could just divide the pot based on how much equity people had in the hand or whatever.
That would actually even out over time.
Technically, over time everything evens out always. So I don't.
No. It would distribute according to the.
Right. I mean,
assuming players of equal skill.
If you played a trillion hands of Ace King suited against pocket jacks, like it would even out over time.
Well, not if I'm the one playing Ace King suited.
Right, you would always lose. Yeah.
I would always lose.
All right. So equity is just the percentage likelihood that you would win. We like to talk about it in Magic. So the thing that I wanted to discuss is is equity actually a real thing in Magic in a useful way? Because
so this was actually in the Spike Colony Discord. There's two ways of thinking about it, right? There's actually, I guess, two rational ways of thinking about it. Then there's the way I think about it, which is not one of the two rational ways. Look, one of them is like you have two players of brilliant ability, right? Like if you have two players of brilliant ability, and they're what is the win distribution between these two decks, right? And then I come from this super cockeyed school because I used to test with Adrian Sullivan, and Adrian Sullivan was famous for being a rogue deck designer, right? Like didn't want to be in the metagame. So we would always assume an imbalance of information. So we always had information and the other guy didn't. And Adrian would actually get mad at me if I played right, sometimes just like, you can't play like, I have this card in my deck. I'm like, so that's probably the wrong way, especially in the era of open deck lists. But I don't know.
Right. So there was a article published recently by Zach Keeney about fear, and it is.
What does Zach Keeney know? Does he have any Pro Tour top 8s?
Yeah, he's got. I think he has multiple. Yeah. Okay.
The answer is he has 2. That was a rhetorical question.
Okay. So Zach Keeney, noted crusher, was just talking about at lower levels, your opponents experience a lot of fear of the unknown, and you can exploit this. And at higher levels, that starts going down because people are just making less mistakes that are caused by fear. And he used some examples. One of the keen observations was that Tron performs much better at Pro Tour level modern play rather than Grand Prix level modern play, because at Grand Prix level you can just angle somebody with your Jund mid-range deck, and they can be so scared of all the things that you can do to them. I don't know if that's an accurate analogy, but at Pro Tour level play, it's just okay, I have Tron. You don't have to. Well, actually, you don't have to trick your opponent. You just have Tron, or you don't.
I think there are some decks. Tron's probably a good example that that do better at a higher level of play, which is weird because most things do worse at higher level of play. But Tron does better probably because. If everybody's good, then shifting the power to the cards is actually
right. Exactly.
You're just gaining advantage. It's my cards are more powerful than your duress.
If the room is going to be 300 Reed Dukes with their deck with counterspells, removal, discard, and whatever.
One spell snare.
Yeah, One spell. They're blue red decks. They're blue red decks. Yeah. Blue red decks, black green decks, mono blue decks, mono white control, whatever, all these decks, you want to be the guy with Tron. You don't want to sit really there and try to.
Decks with all these weird numbers do better at lower levels, and it seems weird because if you're at the lower level and you're oh man, he had the spell snare on turn 2, or he got me with the spell snare, whatever turn it was, right? He got me with the spell snare. But I think part of the reason for that is when you have these weird number decks. They're by definition less consistent. A deck with one spell snare is going to have fewer opportunities to nail somebody with a spell snare than a deck with 4 spell snares, right? But what ends up happening is at the lower levels, the opposing player is worse at break points. So over time, the other player gets more turns, and he gets more over the course of the tournament. He literally just gets more turns. That he would have lost the game at the Pro Tour, right? But instead, he just gets another turn, and then he gets another turn to get you. And that's I think that's really interesting extrapolation.
Right. So here's the question, Mike. What kind of poker player are you? You're loose, tight, are you aggressive, passive, and trappy? What's your kind of style?
I'm super uncreative, super tight. If you just were gonna say
you're tight, but you can't lay down Ace King.
Yeah, well, I can't lay down Ace King. But if you were gonna summarize my poker philosophy, it's muck everything worse than 2 queens, all in otherwise.
All right. I mean, this is this is maybe a little too narrow. We'll just call
That's
you.
a very narrow range.
I guess
right?
I guess you're just a nit. So the nit equivalent for you is basically just playing like mono blue dreadnought with no tricks.
No. Like if I'm playing against buffoons, I could. It depends. I could calling station. I also play bully against people who I think are likely to fold.
Okay, well, what's
not a good
what's your favorite style of play? I guess put it that way.
My favorite style of play is to, I don't know, sit there and collect small amounts of money over time.
Okay, so you're still a nit. You're still like between tight aggressive and a nit.
No, yeah. Oh, I mean, I guess my philosophy would be making money is boring. Making a lot of money is really boring.
I don't know how that applies to poker, but
It's just not dramatic hands, not a lot of showdowns. Like,
all right, so it's kind of like a small ball, but you like don't go for like
rarely pay to see cards.
Yeah, okay. So you're basically still just very tight aggressive, or you might be even tight passive from the sounds of it.
I bully people if I think that they're
Yeah, sure. But I don't want to go to the level up. I just want to go with your inclinations.
No, yeah, baseline. I just
yeah. Like if you were to make a chart that was like tight or loose, and then aggressive or passive, it sounds like you are very tight and you are maybe middle between passive and aggressive. It doesn't sound like you're very aggressive. So personally, I am roughly the same, right? So we talked about this on the range episode, which was also the everything episode because it was over 3 hours long and it was a SWB.
Which episodes aren't over 3 hours long?
Yeah, but this was the car ride to LobsterCon episode, which we talked about range, and one of the things I talked about was if your range is strong or weak. So a strong range contains a lot of strong hands. That's Michael J's range, right? If he's folding everything besides queens or better, and you get into a hand with him, just fold anything that is
if
kings or worse, right?
Like if I'm already in the pot and nobody made it bigger. I mean, I'm not going to... That's a different story.
Right. No, but we're basically saying that you only get into hands with like a really strong range. And the Magic the Gathering equivalent to that is like playing Tron, or maybe in the pre-modern format that might be like playing like Dreadnought. Like these are decks that do not have a lot of surprises. Like a surprise in poker would be like your opponent flipping over Jack 4. You know, you're like you called me with Jack 4, right? And you're like, why are you calling me with Jack 4? It's like, oh well, I'm a maniac. I'm just super chaotic. I'll just do whatever I want with whatever.
Sometimes if it's cheap. What if it's cheap?
Well, I don't want to get it. Mike, you understand the point, right? Which is that you wouldn't call with Jack 4 if you're getting 1-to-1 or getting 2-to-1 pot odds on like you've got third pair with Jack 4. You're not calling with 2-to-1, right?
That's a great way to lose all of your money.
Exactly. Oh yeah. So without getting too far into poker, there's strong hands, there's weak hands, and maniacs like to play weak hands, or looser players like to play weak hands, and so they have a weaker range. And you actually see the same phenomenon in poker, with some exceptions. I don't want to get too into the nitty gritty. It's not to say that the highest level of play is all super tight. The highest level of play involves a lot of moments that you would be surprised how loose you're supposed to play in those spots. But generally speaking, if your opponents suck, you can loosen up and you can surprise them because they also suck, right? So you can make your range weaker by splashing in a few crazy hands, like splashing in a few weaker hands that you normally wouldn't be putting money in with, because you know that you can outplay your opponent with those hands. So that's like the equivalent of putting that one of Spell Snare in your deck, right? So Spell Snare, it could be much worse than the card you replace it with, if it's a Mana Leak or a Spell Pierce or something like that. But if you are going to be able to recover the advantage lost by having a slightly weaker deck by gotchaing people all day with your Spell Snare.
Do you think that there's much measurable equity in getting people and that they're like more likely to go on tilt when you get them with like a weird one-up?
I mean, I wouldn't say that you gain a lot from, like, because tilt is just another expression of inexperience that you can exploit, right? So if somebody is tilting, it almost doesn't matter, like, you know, it almost doesn't matter what you're doing, right? If their decision making gets worse, I wouldn't be like trying to make my deck as tilting as possible unless I'm playing Stasis. Because if you're playing Stasis, people's unfamiliarity with it goes so far that they will concede and give up like the 30%. Like you might be in a spot with Stasis where you're like your opponent's like 30% to win, but they just give up in frustration.
B. Davis literally concedes games he hasn't lost in the finals against Mar.
Yeah.
Right, like it's just like, oh man, you got me.
Right. Like that's what I was saying.
You just didn't die,
right?
You know.
Yeah. Like
you kill him next turn, you know.
But that's weakness on account of your opponent, and you can't really count on that. But you can count on that if like you're playing Stasis, your opponent doesn't know Stasis, and they just like, they just concede because they're frustrated. You'll get a ton of equity that way, and you'll get your opponents to pick up their equity. I don't think your opponents are going to be like, oh my god, you dazed me. Your mono blue tie deck like cast daze. And then they just can't function for the rest of the game. It's just like, okay, no, just play around days sometimes for the rest of the game.
That's actually really interesting. Like, I feel like I have a tendency to get upset when like I take the 75% line and then I lose.
Right.
And then like, but the reality is it's not the 100% line. Like, I'm going to get caught 25% of the time.
That's how poker works, too.
That's literally how it works in Magic. Like, oh, okay. Like, oh, he had triple protection. Of course.
Yeah, if you get it in with your kings against your opponent's ace king, they're still going to suck out on you, I think, like 16% or something.
Yeah, so it's funny because I feel like this probably comes down to people's fundamental belief in how the universe works. And that, like, people are just like, oh, justice is that the 75% guy wins, but like, there's no justice.
There's only math. Universe, yeah, there's only math.
It's pretty funny. I read this quote, and I'm thinking about how to like morph my life around it because I thought it was really smart. I read it in like the last month. It's in a Jack Reacher book. I'm super into Jack Reacher. I'm 18 books in. There's so many Jack Reacher books. Do you know who Jack Reacher is?
Tom Cruise.
Well, yeah, he's or Alan Richardson now on Amazon Prime. But he has this line which is numbers don't lie, and percentages are numbers.
Yes, there you go. The other thing that I really enjoy is like a weightlifting quote, which is just like the weight doesn't lie. Like like the only way that like you can't like editorialize just like, hey, just pick this up, can you pick it up? It's 200 pounds. If you can pick it up, you win, and if you can't, you lose.
It's weird, like when you lose physical capability. So like last May, like at the beginning of PSS last year, when I was like training, I was the fastest I ever was, and I like have lost a lot of speed since then. And it's crazy to me. I was just like deleting old photos today, like just going through my phone, and I was just like, I looked at like the stats from my first race, and I was dying at the end of my first race. Like I remember like just gonna drop dead, and you look at the pictures of me, I look like I'm gonna drop dead. I was so much faster, like almost dropping dead at the end of that race than I can run right now. And it's incredibly strange to me how much speed I lost, and I don't know where it went because I trained like I ran all winter, like. And I don't know, like what you're saying, like the weight doesn't lie. I don't know where all my speed went.
Right,
like
it's just gone.
I didn't decondition. I was like, whatever. I guess I'm going to be in a different age bracket next year. But like, I was like well in the, top half of my age bracket in competitive racing. Now I'm like clocking in a 12.5-minute mile. I'm just like, I just don't know where it went. And it's just super weird.
12.5-minute mile over what, a 26 point whatever.
No, I'm just like, like I train 3.5 to 5 miles a day. Like, and I used to be, like my training mile will be in the 9s maybe, right? Like that's not my racing mile.
Right.
But like, I don't know, all my speed went away. I went somewhere. But like last May I was my fastest ever, and now I'm not fast anymore. So.
Right. Okay. Well, in regards to Magic, the thought that I had was, one, I think we one, it might not be useful even to talk about equity, or we just really suck at it. So there's a lot of things that you can use to illustrate this.
This is the thing. I actually think it's pause you there. Nobody knows. Right?
Right. There's no way to evaluate it.
This is one of those things that God knows. So, like, I don't know, like, many people who are listening to this podcast don't even believe in God. I think some people might. But there's so many things. I'm just like, there is some mathematician somewhere who's looking down, like, who knows what the real distribution is. You know, like, so, for example, you know the Monty Hall problem?
Yeah, of course.
My dad was like a math prodigy in college, right? And I'm trying to explain the Monty Hall problem to me, and he just refuses to accept the math of the Monty Hall problem, which all the math PhDs at the time also refused to accept, right? Like, it's so famous because when she published I don't remember what magazine she published it in, they had countless, like, I'm a PhD in math at Columbia University, and this is not how it works. And obviously, it works the way that it works, but there's no way to prove that. And what they did was...
What do you mean there's no way to prove... Surely,
countless computers.
Hold on a second. There's
no. Countless computers.
There has to be a proof for the Monty Hall problem.
No. Well, they've demonstrated it through computer simulations.
No. There has to be a proof, like a actually proof, like a proof.
But there's not a proof.
There's got to be a proof because it is deterministic.
Now. What?
It is determined. It's
probabilistic. You never know when it's behind which door.
There has to be a proof that switching is mathematically correct.
Switching is mathematically correct.
So there has to be a proof for that, is what I'm saying.
The best example that I can... So, Tim McKenna, who I think he is a...
Because it just sounds like it's 2/3 against 1/3 to me.
No, it's actually not even 2/3 against 1/3. You get the full equity of both of the other doors, right? Actually, it sounds like 1/2 against 1/3, actually, to me.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. No, it's a two. Yeah. It's 2-1 versus 3-1 or whatever.
Yeah. So.
Or no, it's
Tim McKenna explained it to me. It's just like, what if there's 100 doors?
Yeah.
Right?
That's a classic.
3 doors.
That's a classic reason by extremes thing.
Yeah.
But you can
that's
just
easy to understand if it's 100 doors.
This is the proof is like literally just that there's a tree, right? Because the Monty Hall problem is not so complex that you can't just math out the likelihood of every possible outcome.
I literally looked this up because I was trying to explain this to my dad. There's no proof. They've just shown it from computer simulations. If you do it enough computer simulations, you can see that it's right to switch. But there's no convincing somebody other than trying to explain this to them.
I feel like if somebody is mathematically minded, you can, like, it's not that difficult for you to split realities and just be like, okay.
The entire math universe didn't believe her when she published this originally, and it was like the 70s.
Okay, we have a lot of fact checkers in the Spike Colony universe. Please fact check the history of the Monty Hall problem and if it was ever controversial what the outcome was, because
it was definitely controversial. That was one of the main things.
Because I assume that most, like, again, there's a lot of ways that you can explain it. The simplest one is to just be like, there are whatever 4 possible outcomes. 2/3, yeah, like, I don't know, whatever.
It's first of all, it sounds like 1/2 against 1/3. 1/2 is better than 1/3, but it's actually 2/3 against 1/3.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna dig into it because I'm not quick enough on. Like, this is just something that Lan, if he was on the line, would just tell you exactly what it is.
I'm telling you, I literally looked this up recently. It's only because we had better computers that they demonstrated that this is right, but it's not proof. This isn't, like, I'm putting this in quotes. Maybe I have a different idea of what proof is.
No, like a proof, like literally, like written proof. Okay, I mean, let's rewind. The proof that I'm talking about is like
in geometry.
There is, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's none.
Like
all
there's
you simulated a million times.
There's like multiple proofs of the Pythagorean theorem, right? The Pythagorean theorem isn't like something we've simulated a million times.
You need to accept certain axiomatic things for that to be true, right?
I don't want to get too into it because, like, sure, we don't have a, like, I think we don't have a proof for addition or something like that. Like, we don't have a proof for, like, the fundamentals of math, but, like, accepting the fundamentals of math, like accepting that 2 is greater than 1.
Did you ever
we
see
have
the
a
proof that
or
1
whatever.
equals 0? There's this pretty famous like internet meme that 1 equals 0.
Yeah, but that's like a famous proof because it is.
Yeah, so
it
I was
has
just
it has a mistake. Like it
like
just
I had
has
like
an
my
error in
mind
it.
blown, and I'm like, oh my god, how do I do? And then I showed Bella, and Bella was just like, you can't divide by 0. He divides by 0. Like,
Yeah, just like there's
it
just an
breaks the
error.
proof, and I'm like, she's so smart.
But there is a proof that 0.9 repeating is equal to 1. And that one's pretty interesting. And it's actually quite simple. It's just 6 over 9 plus 3 over 9 is equal to 1. And 6 over 9 is 6 repeat, and 3 over 9 is 3 repeat. And so it equals to 0.9 repeat. And then so 0.9 repeat is equal to 1. Anyways, you're right that God only knows. However, I think that we can at least get better at calculating equities by thinking and discussing through certain things.
Terrestrial data seems to be helpful in this case.
I mean, it's mildly helpful. I don't want to. It's not the data's not large or rigorous enough for you to like really like the confidence interval is like way too crazy, right? So, for instance, elves against replenish is anywhere between 25% and 54% in the confidence interval, and the actual is 39%, right? And so that's where you can have some discussion where I do think that most people would say, yeah, of course elves has no greater than 54% equity, but
this is a really good point. I think if you ask Lan, he would actually come down on the other side from me on this still. But like Lan and Dan used to just fight me on like the burn versus affinity matchup in Modern, where they're just like there's an overwhelming amount of data that says affinity is favored over burn.
Right, and you just have
like we always win the matchup.
Well, you have an exploit though. Like that's the thing.
No, the problem was I didn't understand that all of these yahoos out there playing burn didn't know what gear 2 was. If you know what gear 2 is, you can't lose this matchup. Right? Like and that was the problem. So they're just out there trying to gear 1 affinity. They're doing 17 and losing, right? But
right. That's what I'm saying. It's like it's just an exploit. If you behave behave differently than the population, then your data is obviously going to be different, and that's why duress crew data is not necessarily interesting, and that is why we're having the discussion, which is just to say that like, what is the equity of an experienced player versus inexperienced? What's the equity of an exploitive player versus
it's all 50%. It's yes or no. It's win or lose 50%.
No, so the reason why I brought it up was one. I'm gonna self glaze here. Hoip was listening to the Bearded Dragon podcast in the tournament where I got second place, and he was basically like, "Oh, like you were shockingly disappointed for getting second place in a tournament, which is like a really excellent result, compounded with like a survival of the fittest." Is an excellent prize. I will also shoehorn in here that on June 29th, Bearded Dragon is running yet another Mox Diamond Prize pre-modern tournament. June 29th, mark your calendars if you are able to make it to Bearded Dragon in Bernardsville, New Jersey. That is a banger tournament. No, I will be out of the country. But you can catch a ride with, I'm sure, any of the Cabal, or there's plenty of people to pick you up from New Jersey Public Transit and take you to the venue and back, because now Ferris and Sunny and a bunch of others like all live in Jersey, so they can just pick you up from the bus stop. But Hoip was just like, well, you got second place in the tournament. That's like a good result. And I had a few answers to that. One was just like, oh, I didn't play that well. I made some mistakes. And then the final thing that I said was like, like my range of outcomes for a pre-modern tournament that is local to me is much higher than, like, my estimation of it is much higher than just like a random player in the tournament, because I have not failed to top 8 a single like 1K level tournament in pre-modern, with one exception or two exceptions. So like I've probably played, a dozen in the course of like 3 years of pre-modern, and
You didn't top 8 the one that you played Domain.
That's not counted because that wasn't pre-modern. That was
I made top 8.
That was Brew. So The first one was when I was like first one I ever played at Bearded, which
You didn't top 8. I won that one.
I know. I told you that's the first. I'm talking about my misses.
Oh, okay.
Try to keep up, Mike. Try to listen.
I'm just pointing
Try
out
to
that
listen
I
with
won
your
that
ears.
one.
So I missed on that one, and I missed the
What did you play
volleyball
that day?
Grotog, and then I missed the volleyball. The most of these I've played with Grotog. I've played Grotog in all of them except for the one time I played Replenish.
Which you top 8'd.
Right. I also top
the
8'd
Torch
that one.
1.5.
Yeah.
That's the one that I was going to quit playing pre-modern, but then I ate fried chicken, and then I was happy again.
Yeah, our listeners should remember. And then I missed on the volleyball 1K where I was playing Grotog, and I made. I mean, it wasn't a 1K,
top
but
8. I beat you.
No, the volleyball 1K right before LobsterCon. I've topped 4.
There was another volleyball 1K.
It was the one right before LobsterCon of last year. So I was playing Grotog and I lost to
What
Oath
did I
Bonza
play?
in my winning in. You played like Mono Blue Tide or something horrible.
Oh yeah, that was the one where I didn't pyroblast the ball lightning.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Okay.
the basically I was just saying like, look, one I have to make the top 8. Like if I don't top 8 any of these 1Ks, like that's definitely. I mean, it can happen, right?
That's
but
like
it's
out
just
of the
not.
range for you.
It's just not. It's not out of the range, right? It's happened 2 out of 12 times, right? But once I'm in the top 8, that's when I start really sweating and counting my wins and losses.
That's like the Mike Tyson quote. How many push-ups can you do? I don't know, 10. He's like, what? It's just like, I don't start counting until I get about to fail.
Right, exactly. So, I was just like, yeah, once I made top 8, my range of outcomes was between 1 and 8. And honestly, I don't feel like I should lose the round of 8 either. So then it's between 1 and 4. And I'm like,
I used to
at
think
that
I should
point,
win every meetup, and now I don't win any meetups.
Yeah. I mean, that's also another thing, but, and I haven't done great in the last meetups that I've attended. But I also, I'm not locked in for meetups. Like I'm not like tuning my deck, or like, playing Grotog. Like maybe the deal is just that like I'm very good at being an exploitative Grotog player, and my ability to top 8 is like contingent on whatever. But also one of my laments was that I didn't feel like Grotog was a good deck choice for that tournament, even though I got second place. So I was upset at myself for not like for being basically too attached to playing Grotog. And so there was like a lot of reasons I was upset with myself, and part of it was just like realizing what I thought my equity was, and basically like thinking that I should realize a first place in that spot more often than what happened because of my misplays or because of poor decision making. Which is not to say that like that second place is not towards the top of range, because mathematically speaking, there are just a ton of outcomes. Even if you have tons of equity, there's a ton of outcomes less than second place. However,
almost all of them are worse.
Right, exactly. So, however, let's talk about this with Rich Shea too. So, there was, I forget the exact context, but I was just like, look, Rich Shea had, if you ran a simulation and you had gave somebody an obscene win rate, I think something like 85%, right? And you had them play 9 rounds, they'd still miss top 8. I don't know how many percentages of time. It should be pretty easy to figure out.
Yeah,
But
if you have like a 75% win rate, which is absurd, you are not mathematically favored to win 3 rounds in a row.
Right. So
you're barely favored to win 2 rounds in a row.
So if you look at somebody like Rich, you have to kind of try to think about it or talk about it. And you might apply this to yourself if you're very confident in yourself. You have to try to think about it and talk about it as like, look, Rich wasn't going to get less than I don't know, 6'3", right? Like maybe 5.5 and 3.5 is like the bottom of his range, and then win the tournament is the top of it, right? So when you say that, then the question becomes like, okay, well, where is he in that? Like, is he like, if you averaged all of his matches, is he just like 90% to win a match? That might be true.
Maybe.
it might be true. Like it feels like that when I play, and I feel like I'm
The only people who have ever legitimately beat him are David Daniel and Flynn.
Yeah, I mean he missed on the last 2 Lobstercons in a row though. He missed top 8. So, and he was playing Parfait and Replenish in the last 2. But those tournaments he ended like X and 2 both times anyways, right? So that was probably towards the bottom of his range, and again, winning the tournament is the top of his range. And so people say things like, oh, you have to get lucky to make top 8. You have to get lucky to win a tournament. It's like, well, like how much less lucky do you think Rich has to get in comparison to
any random plebeian?
To maybe somebody playing Devourer, which is a deck that arguably relies on luckier outcome, like luck outcomes more than skill outcomes, which is not to say that Enchantress has to get lucky. Enchantress.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I look at Land's deck that he played this week. I just feel like this was just absurdly well designed, rewarding of skillful mulligans, and then also like hyper opportunistic. Like I love opportunism in Magic, right? Like it's like one of my favorite things.
Yeah, because that allows us to have a taste of what it must feel like to be Rich Shea, if only for a moment.
Like, I mean, it's just like, oh, I got the high roll, got ya, right? Like, literally, you know, him and Andy are playing for the belt, and he just second turns. He wins the roll and second turns Andy in 2 of the 3 games. They played like 6 more games. Whoever went first won, right? Like. And the thing that was crazy was he beat Andy in game 3, won the roll through a duress, right? So he has to draw like a Devourer or a Tinker on the second turn, and then he did.
Yeah, literally, I walked over. I watched a game, and I was like, oh, interesting. If Land just top decks here, he wins. Land top decks, and he just starts laughing. And so actually, what I wanted him to do was he has like 0 cards in hand and like an Altar of Dementia and another artifact in play. And so we're like, okay, well, he's just like, he's got his draw step. And I was like, Lan, I want you to do the Baccarat peel where you like just look at the edge of the card, right? And like whatever. But he just like pulls it and it's Tinker and he wins. He just starts laughing. And then I walk over like 30 minutes later, they're playing for fun matches, and I was like, hey Andy, how's the matchup feel? And he was like, I don't know, it's kind of close. And I was like, well, has it been like who do you think is favored, like whatever? And he's like, well, I duressed him, and he drew like I duressed a Rushing River, and he drew like something else good next turn. And I was like, yeah, but that's like that's what's printed on duress. It's like your opponent draws their the best card they could possibly draw next. And then Andy passes the turn, and Land just top decks a Devourer or something, or just like whatever to win the game on the spot again.
Yeah, so to be fair though, I think like, because Land was explaining this to me, like he had to play right. I mean, if he drew the Tinker, that's fine, but like he played in such a way that he could have also drawn the Devourer.
Yeah, but that's like the lightning helix, right? It's like you have to know to put your opponent at 3, which you should just do, right? Like,
yeah, but I think like a lot of players. That's the whole point of what I was talking about, like getting caught with the spell snares. Like at the amateur level, more spell snares get resolved because you get more turns. That like this another player in the same spot might not have won. I mean, he drew
this to me. This is closer to the Tron being better. Like I think that Devourer combo
is clearly a Tron being better deck.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And like I don't think that it is difficult for people to ascertain that they should put Altar of Dementia into play against the black deck. Like it's just I think that that's pretty clearly what you have to do. I think at the time Andy like had a powder keg. He played a powder keg into. He cast a powder keg into a Sabo's Web, which was locking down a lot of his mana, and a Altar of Dementia, which was of course threatening lethal. And there's a known Rushing River, so he's got to play the powder keg, tick it up to 1, get it Rushing Rivered, then play the powder keg again, and then tick it up to 2 to stop Lan. So in that time, Lan has 4 draw steps to draw anything, and he might just draw another altar, right, or a fling, and then he just drew it right away.
Very resilient to Andy's combo, right? Because he has Mox and Lotus Petal.
He has Mox, Lotus Petal, and Chromatic Sphere. Contamination just does almost nothing.
Not nothing, but he's very resilient to Andy's combo.
Yeah. So, anyways, I think that the Devourer deck is closer to a Tron deck in that regard.
I think it is. My current assessment is that it is underrated.
I mean, I don't know. I think that most like it's a little bit difficult, right? So it begs the question: would you play Tron in a lower skill level event?
Sure.
Most people would argue that you are leaving equity on the table by playing Tron instead of playing a deck where you have more agency over outcomes, more ways to exploit your opponent. So do you think that Rich would have been as likely to top 8 LobsterCon with Devourer than he would with Enchantress?
I mean, Enchantress is clearly a deck that plays into Rich's unique skill set, right? Or his preferences, let's say. Maybe not unique skill set is the wrong word.
I think his skill set is pretty unique. I mean, it's not like nobody else has it, but I think that not a lot of people have the skill set that he has.
Like I said at the beginning of this podcast, like just from talking to Rebel or whatever, I'm just buying a bunch of Corey Steel Cutters because like she showed me decks and I watched a bunch of videos that she had me watch. I'm like, shit, I can just get back into Modern, right? Like I know how to play this. Like all this stuff that like seems like, ingenious or whatever is like super intuitive to me. I'm like seeing all these lines and I'm like, oh wow, should just own these cards. I might get back into, which is weird. Modern used to be my favorite format until they Modern Horizons did, but now you just play Corey Steel Cutter and it's, I don't know. Our pre-modern listeners probably don't know what Corey Steel.
Yeah, everybody just boo Mike. Anyways, boo. And my point is that the Devourer deck's top 8ing LobsterCon was another form of exploit. Like they did pick up a lot of
you get free wins if people don't know to cast Engineered Plague against you.
Right, exactly. They did pick up equity from opponents not understanding how their deck worked, and people may continue to not understand how the deck works. But the deck is also quite simple. You can't stop Devourer Fling with anything
fast combo decks.
Anything besides some form of stack interaction. So your disenchants are only okay. And then the altar combo you can obviously stop with Guy's Blessing, Stifle, and like whatever, but that's just a deck that if your opponent is Lan identified that if your opponent is blue and knows what they're doing, then you need to play lots of Xantid Swarm Defense Grid, which is what he did.
Yeah, maxed out on both, which that's one of the reasons I like Lan's build so much, because it just seems obvious to me that like the worst case scenario matchup, he's just got covered.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes a like Black Red Reanimator problem where it's like in game 1 you get to go like Entomb Reanimate, but then in game 2 you have to go Entomb Reanimate and Nature's Claim targeting Leyline of the Void, right? So you're still a combo deck that needs to put stuff together, and then you just need to put together a layer of protection. So like
layer of protection is so robust.
Right, but you still have to draw it. Like my point is that it becomes a 3-leg parlay instead of a 2-leg parlay, and then that's when things start getting a little bit
in
harder.
Return, you have infinity free wins.
I mean, again, I think that if you send 100 Devourer pilots into the course of the next 100 pre-modern tournaments, they will return with roughly 50% wins. Like I think that they'll return with roughly 50% match wins over that sample.
It is better than that, and I think so at least in the context of League, because there are so many decks where you just get free wins from having a ton of Sabos Webs in your deck. Like I wouldn't use free win.
I wouldn't use the context of League though, because like League is sort of unimportant. The tournaments are too short. There's not enough stakes attached. Like the sample of players includes like players less likely to attend a 1K. However, we are growing in numbers. Shout out to Hex & Co. Union Square. We had 22 players this week. 23 and me players this week. We had
that is remarkable for a random Thursday night.
A ton of people converting from Legacy. I heard people talking about Legacy. I heard people playing Proxy, or saw people playing Proxy Vintage on the tables over. So like Eternal players in your area can be converted to pre-modern.
Oh, and there's just like other people were just there, just weren't playing. Like Matty Wan was there. There could have been more.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Chose not to play. He just chose to come and not play, which is weird.
Shrug. But anyways, the my point is just that I'm just saying, like, let's, if you just have 100 1Ks, I think that Devourer is going to return 50% or less. I think it would return 50% or less.
It's going to return 50 wins? That's really great, Lanny. Nothing. Nothing. 0.
And I don't think it's been really doing anything in League. This
is the first time it was played.
No. Oh, no, it's sorry. Actually, on online League.
Actually, that's not true. I've played against it a bunch of previous weeks, and it did not win.
It didn't win. Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
so I think
the week that I won with Red, I think there were 2 Devourer players, and neither of them went 3-0.
So, like, don't get me wrong. I think LAN is going to capture the ceiling of the Devourers, like maybe 55% natural win rate, in addition to the ceiling of, his opponent's mistakes playing into Devourer. But if you take the, like, informed player versus informed player simulation, and, that player is going to be playing a spread of decks that, like, also includes, Weathered Wayfarer Wasteland loops, which are really effective against Devourer. Price of Progress really does a number on Devourer.
Pyroblast, Price of Progress in the same deck is real bad for Devourer.
Yes. Sphere of Resistance is going to get you Misdirection through your defense grid on your fling.
Misdirection's a good one.
Just like, there's a lot of bad things that can happen to you.
All those things together outweigh kill you on the second turn in any random game that I win the roll.
I mean, it's just a question of how often you think that second turn happens. Like, do you think it happens more than 30% of the time?
No, but I think that the fact that it is so squarely in the double digits in the range is that's just attractive to me.
Right.
Like,
so
most decks don't have that.
Let me add my my other interesting layer on top of that, which is just that how important is winning on turn 2 if winning on turn 3 or 4 or 5 or 7 or 10 is just as good in that sample?
I find this to be difficult to answer. If you win on turn 2, you, like, obviate the need of all these win on turn 7s or whatever. This game's already over, right? Like, I highly prize and value the ability to win super fast, especially through resistance, because it cuts off other universes. Like, you're talking about, like, okay, winning on turn 7 is just as good as winning on turn 2, except for you had, like, 5 more turns that you could have screwed up, or they could have, like, caught you or something like that.
Oh yeah, well, screwed up is one thing that you should just be eliminating from your gameplay, right? Because absolutely,
it's in the possibility set.
But absolutely, if by leveraging your skill you can win a lot more just one turn slower, like, so here's an easy example, right? The Fluctuator deck that was played in PSS 2022 and the Fluctuator deck that top forward LobsterCon 2023, which one was faster and which one was better?
Aaron's deck was faster, Flint's deck was better.
Right, and Flint's deck was better because it didn't win on turn 2 almost ever, but it won on turn 3 much more, right?
Well, I mean, Flint's deck is just, Danny DeRoy deck is just like a masterpiece in deck design. And Aaron's deck is a forerunner, right? But the fact that he could transform basically into a
right, which is to say like that's kind of reasonable. But the other question is, if you were like, the reason it's a masterpiece in deck design is also because it recognized that turn 3 is as good as turn 2. Like, I have a second question for you. Does a mono blue Dreadnought list that contains 4 Lotus Petal compete better against the meta than a mono blue Dreadnought list with 0 Lotus Petal?
That's actually the thing I was going to say. I'm like, I'm sure there are some metas that the Lotus Petal version is better. But, I mean, the equilibrium meta that we all live in right now seems to indicate that no Lotus Petals is better.
Right, absolutely.
But there is, I would argue there is some universe where the Lotus Petal version is better.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
Imagine everyone is on Mono Blue Dreadnought.
Yeah, we don't have to get into it. Like, I understand the premise. All I'm saying is that because we're dealing with the universe that we live in, like, we should be able to say, like, no, Dreadnought doesn't have to be a turn faster. So, all I'm saying is that your value of winning faster is not worth the opportunity cost in some cases. Now, the question of Devourer is just like, okay, well, Mox Diamond lets you do more than just win faster. It lets you splash green for Xanath Swarm. and the amount that you win faster is actually pretty reasonable because Devour is a 5-mana combo. If and only if you have a free artifact, right? So Lan has a lot of Lotus Petal Mox Diamond. Traditional lists would have a lot of neither. And as a result, those lists would also need to put an artifact into play, increasing their mana burden, right? So Tinker Fling or Tinker Altar is 5 mana, but if you're also adding a Chromatic Sphere or a Sabo's Web to the mix, that increases the combo's weight to 6 mana, which makes it a lot worse when you consider that Mox Diamond not only generates a mana a turn ahead of time and also reduces your Tinker investment to 0 mana. So don't get me wrong, I love Mox Diamond in Devour, but it is necessary to caveat when you say like, oh, this deck can win on turn 2, how important that is, because like winning on turn 2, 3, or 4 is only matters if your opponent is planning on killing you on turn 3, 4, or 5.
So here's a thing. I think maybe give you an insight into why I think the thing I do. Lan's build that has, the 4 Lotus Petals and 4 Mox Diamond super jives with how I would have built Devourer in the abstract. Because if you go back to my first Lobstergon, Devourer beat BK in the top 8, lost to Rich in like an epic match. And I was looking at the list, and if you look like all my early lists had things like Gaia's Blessing, because I was like wanted to fight against the Devourer combo like passively. That's like a lot of the early biases in my deck design and in pre-modern, because I so valued the Devourer deck as a result of the first tournament I was in. But I asked like Hoyp and Flint, and I'm like, this deck seems very misbuilt. Like, why wouldn't you play these cards instead of Jeweled Amulet? And they're just like giving me all these reasons why you would play Jeweled Amulet, and I was just like, these reasons all suck. Like, I would play Lotus Petal and Mox, right?
Yeah, Jeweled Amulet is pretty thin.
But that was the card everyone was playing, including the deck that made top 8. So, like, I didn't explore Devourer at all. I just recognized it as a player in the metagame, and I built my decks to just like, okay, I'm going to passively be good at Devourer by playing Gaia's Blessing. Like, my Stasis deck at PSS had Gaia's Blessing, in part because I wanted to have resistance against Devourer decks, which did not show up at PSS, right? But, like, to me, like, the way that Lan built it is just a realization of how I would have built it, so I think I just like it more because of that.
Right. And I think that you can also look into splitting the difference, where maybe you play Mox and a Lotus Petal and whatever, but the reason why I wanted to bring it up is because it plays into equity, right? So, Andrea Mengucci cut Anger from his Elves deck, and it made his Elves deck a lot slower. But did he lose equity? Is he going to win? Is he going to win back all these games where he doesn't draw Mountain and Yavimaya or whatever, and whatever that he loses when he doesn't win at a certain speed? And
told me that he only tested against red deck, elves, and goblins when he was on that. So I was just like shocked that he chose to still play elves, if that was his entire testing cohort. And
well, he can pretty simply say like, these are the matches I'm concerned with, or just be like, I'm confident. He can be like, I can beat most of the others.
Testing cohort. The idea that you would end up on elves is surprising to me. Right?
Well, no, that's not how you're misrepresenting. You're misrepresenting the story. The story starts with Mengu wants to play elves because he likes the deck, and then he's testing the matchups that his buddy Tommy has on him, and or that he's interested in testing, and so he basically tests the Goblins matchup until he can get it up to 50%, and then he's like, okay, that's good enough for me, let's go play this tournament, and then he just top fours the tournament anyway. So whatever.
He won against Goblins, actually. It was actually the kicker.
Oh yeah, we went 2-1.
This was Goblins, but he beat it twice or whatever.
Yeah, call the herd and whatnot. But my point is, in using that example, wasn't that Mengu had perfect process. My point was, he had a certain examination that was like, a lot of people who are like, oh, you have to have Anger and elves. You'd be like, why? And you're like, oh, well, your elves deck needs to be fast. And you're like, okay, well, why does it need to be fast? Like, what's the fastest that you can win with Anger? And you're like, well, it's going to be like something like turn 3 with an excellent draw, turn 4 with a normal draw, right? You're like, okay, well, let's say you have all those same cards in your hand, and then you just don't have Anger in your deck, and you don't have Mountain in your deck. Like, when are you going to win? It's like, okay, well, probably just turn 5. Right? And you're like, okay, well, what deck are you?
Turn 4.
Turn 4 or something. Yeah, it's like, what deck is going to kill you? faster. And then you're going to like list a few decks and you're like, okay, well, what percentage of the metagame do those decks represent? And at the end of the day, you might just look at it and you're like, oh yeah, I don't need Anger. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I think that Anger is an excellent card to play in Elves. You can also motivate a red splash in Elves by playing cards like Thornscape, Battle Mage, and whatever. But if you are strictly talking about the speed of one option over the speed of another, that has to come with a rider of like, how many games are you going to lose because you return slower? Because the answer might be just like not very many, depending on the pre-modern format you live in.
There are very few things that we call better that don't come with an asterisk, right?
Yeah.
Like back in the day, I was just like, oh, I'm on mono blue and you're on blue white dreadnought, right? And my argument was, if I can't foil one time because I have a flooded strand instead of an island, it's enough for me to never play blue white, right? Like one time is enough. And you're like, what's blue white is just better. But now I guess we're collectively in a universe where blue white is worse.
I mean, plausibly, like it's not to say that you can't build a blue-white list now, and some people like yours truly are working on it and basically kicking the tires and seeing where you can have some advantage. Because
I actually thought blue-white's super good if everyone's on mono blue, but I think
that blue-white's good if people are on mono blue and people are playing lots of survival decks, because I think blue-white is better against survival decks.
Agreed.
But another question was, I was in the Elves Cabal and I was just like, what happens if you just cut Kamal and you just play another Deranged Hermit? Because most of the time that you get Kamal, you'll win getting Deranged Hermit. And then, like, it's like, yeah, Kamal can help you make, like, 3,000 mana and make 3,000 damage. But your opponent has 20 life. Yeah, like, so like...
when I was playing the Natural Order version, my most common target for Natural Order
was Deranged.
Was just Deranged Hermit.
To the point... I had
Verdant Force in my deck.
Yeah, so
I'm like, oh no, I can mid combo that's deranged and then tap my Gaia's Cradle. It's much better.
So Johannes also just plays a Natural Order Elves deck that just doesn't have Verdant Force or whatever, and his Natural Order targets are just Deranged Hermit and Kamal. He's just like adds Natural Order to stock Elves without adding Verdant or...
I do think there are a fair number of games where you just win with Kamal. Like, you just have an overabundance of mana and it's just overrun.
Right, but if you have an overabundance of mana, my counter argument is like, then if you have 2 Deranged Hermits, that's 24 power in Squirrels.
But there's just, I mean, we don't obviously there are cases where each...
Yeah. There's going to be cases.
But like, if your opponent doesn't have very much creature removal...
100% of the time...
Kamal always wins.
100% of the time that you draw the top card of your deck and you have 5 mana in play and the card is Deranged Hermit instead of Kamal, that's a lot better, right? Or that was like another thing that... you would argue against like blue-white Dreadnought versus mono-blue Dreadnought. It's like 100% of the time that you activate Flooded Strand, it deals 1 damage to you. And you can't not do that. And then so you're just like, that's like a lot of games where you have 1 less life. And, once you start counting those games, those things start really hurting. Or the thing that people didn't talk about, which was, what are you cutting for Swords of Plowshares and Meddling Mage? You're cutting extra copies of Impulse and Opt, or Flash of Insight, and those cards are really, really excellent. And you are gaining something by having Mage. You're gaining a lot.
You're gaining a lot.
I have been playing a lot of Blue-White Dreadnought and since LobsterCon, including at LobsterCon, and I think the deck is actually severely underrated and it needs another look. And I have been playing lots of games where having a semi-transformative sideboard where you just like bring in Masticore, or I've been trying 1 Angel and 1 Eternal Dragon, and it's like totally fine.
And it's Eternal Dragon and Dreadnought?
Yeah.
How many planes do you have?
I board up to 2 planes.
That is such an interesting thought.
So you have to have 2 planes, because if you're going to board in Angel, you need your Flooded Strands to be able to get the second plane. Yeah. And if you board in Armageddon, you need to be able to Armageddon your first plane.
You don't need to explain all the rest of this debate. I got it, right? Yeah. Like, it's funny, like, I did a training, like, in 2011 while I was writing the official Miser's Guide, and one of the things that I learned in this training is just, like, the collective intelligence of the average like audience member is so much higher than it once was. Like you could just say a sentence and then like like you're just like, oh, I boarded. I'm like, my question is, how many planes do you have? I boarded in a second planes. Done. You don't need to explain anything else to me. Versus like I was reading the official Miser's Guide. I'm like explaining every little point of like, this is why you would do this. This is why you would do this. You know, like, and then you lace all those things.
Yeah,
together.
or you can leave it up to your audience to ask follow-up questions when we have a format like this, where you can hop in on Discord and be like, Mike said, like, this is the case, and I'm wondering if there's more that if he can expand on that sentence, and then you can go and expand on it.
Well, it's funny because like I think in the not pre-modern section, somebody asked like, because I had published a new Ancestral Recall like that week. How can you and Roman say this when so and so who's really smart said this opposite thing? And I was just like, pretty sure we play way more standard than they do. And they're like, yes, that is true.
There you
like,
go.
That's the reason why. Like, they just don't play the format. So
all right, well, fair enough. I think we talked pretty solidly on process and equity today. And you said your throat was hurting a little bit, and it's Saturday, and we can gift our listeners with a shorter one, a mere hour and a half plus. Bearded Dragon, June 29th. Links.
Oh wait, so we have to say, like, we live in New York City.
Oh yeah, we live in New York City. Hex & Co. is located in Union Square. Mike plays nearly every week. I will get out when I can find the time, and that is every Thursday. So if you're listening to this podcast, we had a listener that had listened to several episodes. I don't know when they started listening, but they were like, they didn't realize that we just like live in New York.
And he also lives in New York.
Yeah,
I didn't realize League was like right there.
Yeah, so we live in New York City, and New York City rules. Order the Secret Torch forever. Shout out to Shane, who road warriored all the way from the Dress Crew to visit our awesome weekly. And yeah, we're finally seeing a lot of groundswell here. So get your friends who play Legacy to play Pre-Modern. They will love it. NYSE is this weekend. I think a few of our homies are going to go. Roland is going to commentate. Andy's going to go. D-Tal, I'm sure, is going to go.
Wait, when you say this weekend, you mean like right now?
No, like a week from today.
Oh, okay.
So June 14th. So all of our friends are going. I kind of want to go. And either commentate, or I could talk myself into playing these paradoxical outcome decks, but that is
I'm
other thing.
Ohio this coming weekend.
Ah, shame. But yeah, love Spy Colony. And thanks for your continued support. And love Spy
And
Colony.
I'm always surprised when new people are asking questions in the Spike Colony Discord. So shout out to all the people who are in the Spike Colony Discord. I actually am so tickled that there are just these like online spaces that we created that are just like having like real like valuable discussions and stuff.
Yeah, that's why we do it.
It's like, and I'm just so happy about it.
I wanted to start the podcast so that I could have the discussion with you on a regular basis, and then that, parlaying into people joining in on the discussion is exactly why, I wanted to do this. And so don't be shy. Keep up the hot takes. Keep up the healthy discourse.
And in case you haven't joined Spike Colony Facebook group, Spike Colony Pre-Modern, Jordan, one of the Wisconsin guys, posted his version of 23andMe. So it is posted in the Facebook group, the version he was testing last night against Mashlegs. So that is not my version. However, it might be better than my version.
Yeah.
Or
you can just like put together every blue and white card that looks like it belongs in a control deck, add a couple guys blessing, and call it a day.
I mean, it's like I said, whenever 23andMe wins, it looks like Land's still winning, and I just call it like Land's still without all the pesky synergy.
Right. All right. Love Spike Colony.
Bye. Bye.